My dear fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, and friends in Jesus Christ. One commandment, one love. One winter, when Gandhiji was busy with the freedom struggle, a little girl was left abandoned beside his Sabarmati ashram. Seeing her plight, Gandhiji asked the inmates to give her food and shelter. He then left for a long trip. On returning, he asked caretaker, "Have you taken good care of that little girl?" "Yes," replied the caretaker, pointing to the girl asleep under a blanket. Gandhiji asked the man, "How many blankets do you use?" The caretaker replied, "2." Gandhiji then queried, "How is it that you have 2 blankets, and have you given this child only 1? For holy people like Gandhiji and Mother Teresa, there was no dichotomy between love of God and of neighbor. Each love led to the other, fed the other. Today's gospel speaks of the inseparable bond between these 2 loves that are actually only one love. Let's examine this love commandment in the light of the first reading. The second paragraph of the first reading consists of the popular Shema, Israel or Hear, Israel, invocation that become the daily Jewish prayer. The readings begins with an exhortation to the Israelites to obey God's commandments. First among which was, love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. In Hebraic thought, heart, soul, and strength do not mean separate human faculties, but the person in the totality of her or his being. In sum, the believer was to cling to God in undivided love. The refrain to the responsorial psalm forms a fitting response to the mandate contained in the Shem, "I love you, Lord, my strength." Jesus takes the love commandment to the higher plane by juxtaposing 2 passages that speaks about love. First, he quotes from the first reading about love of God. Second, he ties this to the love of neighbor. You must love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus means the love of God is a farce if it doesn't lead to love of neighbor, and love of neighbor is refined self-love if it doesn't spring from love of God. Jesus' apostles constantly stress his love commandment in the New Testament. John writes, "If someone says he or she who does not love his or her brother who his or she has sinned, cannot love God with whom he or she not sinned." Also, James calls his commandment a royal law and stresses, "Faith without works is dead." Note that when Jesus talks about neighbor, it is not only the one living next door, but also the one by the roadside, robbed, beaten, and forsaken, as in the parable of the Good Samaritan. What is my attitude to my neighbor? Sick and suffering, poor and powerless, friendless and forsaken. Many Christians, having successfully translated their love of God into concrete love of the neighbor, their love was not merely patronizing kind of charity, but a total identification with the poor. For example, by serving the lepers in Molokai. Father Damien de Vester himself died of leprosy in 1889. Today, the work of Mother Teresa's missionaries of charity too speaks volumes of such love. When believers of different religions discuss about God, there is often conflict since everyone seeks to prove that one's God is greater than the other's gods. However, when this love of God is translated into concrete works of love, people of different religions can unite and work concertedly for progress and peace. Love unites. People like Muhammad Yunus of Bangladesh, winner of the 2006 Nobel Peace Prize, proved that love for neighbor can take diverse forms. His Grameen Bank reaches out to about 6.6 billion borrowers from 70,000 Bangladeshi villages, 97% of whom are women. How can I make my love for God fruitful by serving my neighbor? Remember, these are not two, but one love. May the Lord bless each one of us. Amen.